SCOB is a retired justice of the Constitutional Court and inspecting judge of the Correctional Services. He joins us now via Zoom. A very good morning and thanks for making the time, Justice.
A wonderful South African.
You have worked with the late Archbishop Tutu in multiple platforms in relation to human rights. What was that like for you?
I think they really were, as you say, human rights. The spectacular thing about the Archbishop is that he really cared for our entire world and everyone in it, including all humans. And he cared also for LGBTIQ people. And he saw the oppression of lesbian, gay, transsexual and bisexual people as a particularly pernicious form of oppression across our whole continent. He didn't only speak for equality in South Africa, but across the whole of Africa. And very characteristically, he was very funny about this. In 2013, we launched a United Nations statement with Judge Nabi Pillay called Free and Equal, endorsed by all the United Nations agencies across the world. And he told a story there. He said, if I go up to heaven and God tells me he's homophobic, I will say to him, no, I don't want to be here. I want to go to the other place. And of course, everyone laughed, but he was making a profound point about faith and ethics and religion and the acceptability of using religion as a force for hatred. And that was just one of his enormously great gifts of generosity to us all.
What was your impression of his use of humor to get through, even when he was dealing with really complex and really important issues?
Yes. I think his humor came from a very deep place in his own heart, because he was a joyful human being who saw the grief and sorrows and brutality of our world, but he also knew that each of us can do something about it. So he was not going to keep quiet. He wasn't going to be inactive. Both him and Mom Leah were very engaged, very active, very passionate, very outspoken. So his humor came from his commitment to the world and to humanity and to all the living creatures in the world. And it bubbled over. I remember I saw on your platform earlier this morning, I saw him in voting, not in the famous 1994 election, but in a much later election. And he put in his ballot and then he did a little dance. And you can't help laughing out loud, because the man is such a personification of what is good in humankind, what is affirming, what is enriching, what is positive and forward-looking. And he was such a force for good across everything, against corruption, against inefficiency, against sloth and dishonesty, and of course, for social justice and for equality for queer people. His own daughter, an ordained minister in his own church, was a same-sex oriented woman, a wonderful person in her own right, and he performed her marriage with great joy as a former head of the Anglican Church in our country. So that bubbling out of joy was the humor was very, look, yes, there he is. Isn't that just wonderful? You can't grieve too much. You have to celebrate in joy that for so long we had this extraordinary person with us.
Like former late President Nelson Mandela, he's quoted a lot. But what for you are the quotes or the acts that stand out for you where you feel this was such a huge contribution to humanity?
I think for me, his stand on AIDS was critically important. Now, if you don't mind, I want to go back to the LGBTIQ issue. The main activists who propelled the inclusion of equality for lesbian, gays, transsexuals, bisexual people in South Africa were Zaki Ahmed and Simon Nkodi and their allies, Mpumi Mthethwa and others, Palesa Ditsie. But without Desmond Tutu, there is little doubt in my mind that the negotiators wouldn't have included that clause in our interim constitution in 1993 and then in the final constitution in 1996. So he early on, before the rest of the world really had even cottoned on to LGBTI equality, Tutu had committed himself publicly in the constitutional negotiations to saying LGBTI people must also be free. And then, as controversially and as anticipating many other stances, he took a firm stand on the meaning of AIDS. He was unequivocal that there's a virus. He was unequivocal that there is stigma. He was unequivocal that we all have to unite to deal with this virus. And he was unequivocal that antiretrovirals work. And that brought him into direct confrontation with President Mbeki personally and direct confrontation with the ANC government in those years, which was around about 20 years ago and more recently, before President Mbeki and the government rolled out antiretrovirals. And of course, Tutu helped make it possible that we in South Africa now have the world's largest publicly provided antiretroviral treatment program. So from grave tragedy and defeat, he helped bring out the triumph of our ARV program today. And that really was characteristic of his life and his commitment to fighting stigma in all cases where people are marginalized or discriminated against. And his fight for racial justice came from a deep commitment to justice for everyone. And of course, that is why he became so prominent under apartheid. But after apartheid, his commitment to justice and to clean governance and to equality and to destigmatization was undiminished.
How will his death impact efforts at social justice and healing in South Africa?
I don't want to be negative. I feel a sense of profound joy that we had him until 90, we had Madiba until 90, that we had Kathy Katrada, that we had the Sizulus deep into their 80s. We should feel a sense of gratitude. So I think looking at the positive, he is an inspiration. His death is an extra inspiration to all of us to do what he did, which is to demand ethics, whether with tears or action or protest on the streets or through the ballot box, all of which he used. So his death is an inspiration to us to reaffirm and to continue his legacy.
Let's thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
What a pleasure.
Justice Edwin Cameron, and just flowing into that conversation we're having for the day, where we're inviting our viewers to talk to us on the number 084-8133-465 or send in your voice notes. Archbishop Desmond Tutu devoted his work to peace and healing the South African nation. Do you think we have achieved healing? Let's take a look at some tweets that have come through. IH Nazo says peace and forgiveness is a two-way street, but in our case, perpetrators are proud to apologize, but we were told to forgive and forget. Lechasa Patlamolo says we as South Africans, we won't be on the same page. Whilst we'll remain whites, blacks will remain blacks. Racism is still alive. Malefetane Lemao saying, good morning, Team Agenda. We South Africans are far from achieving peace, because when we think we have won on something, then boom, something happens again. Something else happens again. Like we dealt with job opportunities and then, wow, corruption started. We cannot be happy at all. Kabelo Tumelo says healing will remain a pipe dream as long as we have some laws in place. We compromised in codes, sunset clause. Even after 1994, we kept on compromising. Diniko Baloyi says South Africa is still divided by race, color, and tribalism. Lorika Ngumalo says there's not much healing that has happened, and it's disappointing that as a strong-voiced man of the cloth, he didn't manage to unite the nation. Siabulela Kwaikwai saying, good morning, Ausdesra, and to your viewers. He truly devoted his life into that, but the government failed him. He advocated for justice as a prerequisite to healing, but no justice has been done, hence no healing is being realized. May his soul rest in peace. Tepo Tsese saying it's impossible to achieve healing and peace in an unequal society, period. Of course, tributes continue to pour in for the late Anglican Archbishop